When you're planning to buy a home or a property, there is going to be a lot going through your head. And I can guarantee that most of your concerns are going to lie with all of the pre-purchase steps, not so much what to do or what things you need to be considering after you've made that purchase. One of the most important things to understand and something to definitely be considering is how much extra cash you should be holding on to outside of your deposit after, or technically before you've made the purchase, but how much you should have after you've made a purchase, how much you should be holding on to after you make that purchase. Let's discuss. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese, and in today's video, I'm talking about how much money you should be holding onto as a safety net after you've put down your deposit for your property or your home. Realizing you're about to hand over a significant amount of money to acquire or purchase this property can be daunting. It can be stressful because having that safety net of savings that you've built up, which is your deposit, and having it taken away very quickly to put down your down payment or your deposit for your property, it's just going to be stressful having almost nothing potentially at the end of it, depending on how much you put towards the property. From there, having an understanding of why it's important to hold onto some cash after making a purchase for a rainy day is probably one of the most overlooked things, in my opinion, when people go to buy a house. So I'm going to discuss why I think it's important that you should hold on to X amount of dollars after making a purchase. Now, as a summary, the main reasons why you would want to be doing this is for personal security, any unexpected maintenance and repairs on the property that you purchase that come up in that initial period of you owning the home, any major emergencies, family emergencies, medical emergencies, whatever they may be, but basically something where you may need quick access to money. If you put it all onto your house deposit, you may not have access to that money. And finally, for taxation reasons, where if you're someone who is a high income earner or a sole trader who may be slapped with a big tax bill from the tax man come tax time, it's another reason why you may want to hold on to some money after buying a house. Now, that is a top level summary of some reasons why you would want to hold on to cash after making a purchase. Depending on your risk tolerance of an unexpected expense being thrown your way, it may be in your best interest to hold on to some cash just to even put your mind at ease. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, especially if it's going to make you less stressed in the long run. In my instance, I held on to approximately $10,000 as it was the minimum I wanted to hold on to as a safety net at the time of purchasing my property. For my next purchase though, I believe that number will be much higher because my risk tolerance will have gone down. Purely because I now have assets and things that I have more expenses as I'm a little bit older and I've taken on more responsibility. I have a different lifestyle, which isn't similar to the lifestyle I had when I did purchase my property. And on top of that, just as a safety net, like I said, for my own assets, if unexpected expenses come, I can't just say, oh, I don't own anything, it doesn't matter. It's now at the point that I could potentially be at risk of losing them. And that's definitely not something I want to be doing. I want to take calculated risk. I don't want to take unnecessary risk. Therefore, that number will most likely be higher. So I'm just going to throw a couple of very specific scenarios at you, or statements, just to give a little bit of context as to things that I personally didn't consider before buying my house, and they're a little bit more in depth to the summary that I provided earlier. When looking for a property or a house, the older it is, the more maintenance that it will probably need. A house that is ignored generally loses value, but on the other hand, you will need money to carry out that maintenance. Therefore, there's a reason. Issues are more common than you may think, and if they arise within the first 6 months, it can definitely catch you off guard and put you in a position that you don't want to be in. On top of that, having a bit of money set aside for emergencies is always going to be a good thing as well. Personally, I have an emergency fund now. I didn't at the time that I purchased my house. I didn't know about the system that I was using. I hadn't really gotten into it too much. Whereas now it's very structured. I have an actual set of money which I've purposefully allocated for a rainy day, such as an emergency, something that I cannot pay for with my other funds. We'll call it other funds. This is so important to understand. Building an emergency fund is probably one of the best ways you can give yourself peace of mind and make sure that you don't get caught off guard with an unexpected expense. And if you want to learn a little bit more about emergency funds, I have left a link in the description below to the video I've made, but there are plenty of online resources out there explaining why you should have one and how to save one. And finally, the last one that I did summarize was about taxation. Now, again, you may think, oh, this isn't applicable to me, but at the time of you buying a house, it's definitely something to consider. My tax bill last year was about $4,000, and I think I know why it was so much, but it actually caught me off guard. If I wasn't prepared and hadn't set aside money for that instance, not necessarily for tax, but as an emergency or as a bills account, like I have mentioned in previous videos, that would have caught me off guard. If we're talking about when I first bought my house, and imagine that I had a $4,000 bill after putting my deposit down and having less than $10,000 in a bank account to put towards that, that would have been crazy. So again, just because it may not be applicable now, or you think it may not be applicable, still consider it, still understand the risk, and make sure that you plan accordingly. All of these discussion points are viable and logical reasons as to why you should keep a bit of a buffer after putting your deposit down for a house. It is very difficult to pinpoint the exact number that you should be holding on to, as everyone's situation is different. My suggestion would be, if you're at the 20% mark for purchasing your property, I would recommend keeping a minimum of $10,000. $10,000 is a lot of money in the short term, in the very short term, where if something very immediate came up, you would probably be able to pay for most things upfront with that $10,000. Let's just say a $2,000 car repair as an example. That being said, I would keep as much as possible after that 20%, because you're probably already avoiding paying LMI. And at this point, having liquid funds sitting in an offset or redraw is going to be offsetting the loan, which is great, it's what you want, whilst you having access to as much of that savings as possible, and it not just being eaten away by you paying off a little bit extra of the house at that period in time. There's not really any difference. And if I've said something that's a little bit confusing regarding LMI and offsets, again, I have made videos about them and I've linked them in the description below if you want a bit more information about them. Now, this is where it's a little bit controversial. If you're not quite at the 20% mark, you may have to pay LMI, which no one wants to pay LMI. It's a bit shit, but well. I would still urge you to save about $10,000 or hold on to that $10,000 whilst building your buffer back up. The interest that you would have to pay on 10 grand probably isn't going to be a lot over the course of however long it takes you to save that 10 grand. And even if you kept it in an offset account or you put it into a redraw, it's probably still going to benefit you in the long run. It's going to offset that loan anyway. So the main thing would be the LMI. But again, having the peace of mind, 10 grand, it's not that much. I would absolutely consider holding onto it. Do your own research, do your own due diligence. Good luck on your journey to saving for a property if that is a goal of yours. I'm sure you will get there if you work towards it. Overall, if you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking and subscribing. And as always, I will see you in the next one.